investing in the energy transition, food security, and regional value chain for sustainable development in North Africa and West Africa. During this ceremony that brings us together this morning, we will give the floor to many personalities. The first one will be the Director General, National Development Planning Commission, Ghana, and the Chair of the outgoing Bureau Intergovernmental Committee of Senior Official and Experts for West Africa, Mr. Kojo Esem Mensah Apramba. Then to some urgent matter official one, we will give the floor to the Deputy Minister of Finance of Ghana, Dr. Jikuma. After the speech of Dr. Jikuma, we will give the floor to the Director General, Ministry of Economic Affairs and Sustainable Development, Mauritania, and the Chair of the outgoing Bureau Intergovernmental Committee of Senior Official and Expert for North Africa, Mr. Sheikna Sheikh Ahmed Deda. Goodwill message from the United Nations Resident Coordinator of Ghana, Mr. Charles Paul Ienacho. Charles Aban. Oh yes, Mr. Charles Aban. Yes. Then we will give the floor to the Director of the Sub-Regional Office for North Africa, Mrs. Susanna Schwidrowski. Then we will give the floor to the Director of the Sub-Regional Office for West Africa of ICSOE, Mrs. Ngone Diop. So, now let's give the floor to the Director General, Development Planning Commission, Ghana, and the Chair of the outgoing Bureau, Mr. Kojo Esem Mensah. You have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you, and thank you very much. The Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance for Ghana, Dr. John Apuntuya Kumar, Mr. Sheikna Sheikh Ahmed Bedat, the Director General of Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs, and Sustainable Development of Mauritania, and the Chair for North Africa Outgoing Bureau. Mr. Taib Osher, the Secretary General of Arab Maghreb Union, my good friend, Mr. Charles Paul Ikano Bani, the Resident Coordinator of United Nations of Ghana, Mrs. Ngone Diop, the Director, ECA West Africa, and the colleagues. Mrs. Susanna Chidrowski, also the Director of ECA North Africa Office, and her colleagues. Your Excellencies, eminent experts and senior public officials, colleagues and partners, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the media, and invited scholars. It is always a privilege to have the opportunity to serve Africa, and it is one of these such rare chances that has offered me the occasion to welcome you to Accra, and particularly to thank you for responding to our invitation to be part of this important meeting, the Joint Intergovernmental Committee of Senior Officials and Experts of North and West Africa. I am doing this in my capacity as the outgoing chair of the 25th ICSOE for West Africa. Let me congratulate the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and particularly the two sub-regions, the West and North Africa, for jointly organizing this statutory meeting. The meeting will address three cardinal development issues of our continent under the theme, investing in energy transition, for security, regional value chains, for sustainable development for North and West Africa. Ghana is very grateful that at the 25th session of the committee meeting in Marrakesh, Morocco, in November 2022, members from the region, especially West African members, elected Ghana to chair, and further entrusted by both regions to host the 26th session of the ICSOE. I wish to reiterate my gratitude to the Kingdom of Morocco for the excellent hosting of the 25th session, for which Ghana happily adopted as a standard to attain in Accra. During Ghana's period of chairing, the implementation of the work for 2022-2023 program of the ECA Sub-Region Office for West Africa, we had noted the challenging global regional environmental issues, the prolonged effect of the recent crisis. But we were not prepared. We are all aware of the lingering effect, even now, of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, the climate change challenge which continues to ravage our part of Africa, and the compounding growing insecurity and political crisis in the Sahel. These were challenges we needed to confront. Pathetically, we still have these complex security challenges and political crisis in the region, which is creating uncertainties and making it difficult for us to reduce the risk of our economic landscape. There is no doubt this is contributing to the erosion of investors' confidence in our great continent. Ultimately, these daunting challenges negatively affected the attractiveness and the utilization of the productive capacities of the region. Despite the challenging environment and seemingly intractable problems, the year 2023 turned out to be a hope-building and eventually successful year for the sub-region of West Africa. The evidence is obvious, with the demonstrated achievements in hastening the implementation of the African Free Trade Continental Area in West Africa. This was done by supporting countries in preparing relevant development plans, addressing the demographic dividend through implementing budgets that are sensitive to the demographic dividend, and then adopting many strategies and interventions to accelerate the attainment of the sustainable development goals in our sub-region. The most remarkable thing is that the West African Office took up the specific recommendations from the last meeting in Morocco and implemented all of them. These included the request to produce research documents on the informal sector in West Africa and the respective contribution of the value chain development to the structural transformation of the region. Both studies were undertaken and reviewed and validated by us, the experts. I am sure more insights on the sub-regional office achievements during the period will be taken up and presented by the Regional Director for West Africa. But nevertheless, let me not miss this chance to congratulate the office for the award they received from the African Association of Economic Zones organization in the recognition for their efforts and the success in supporting member countries in the implementation of the African Free Trade Continental Area. On behalf of the ICSOE, I wish to register our appreciation and commendation for the Sub-Regional Office of West Africa for a job well executed, accomplished, and sustained, even amidst the current arduous ambience. We are proud of you, Madam Ngoni, and your team. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, during Ghana's chairing period, the Bureau successfully organized in March 2023 a high-level dialogue on the eve of the Conference of Ministers responsible for finance and economic development in Africa to discuss the structural inequalities and vulnerabilities in West Africa in the context of multiple crises to define an appropriate mix of solutions to address them. The pre-conference dialogue was attended by more than 100 national experts and policymakers across the sub-region, and salient recommendations were made to tackle inequalities, vulnerabilities, and the poverty trap for which West Africa finds itself. These recommendations were submitted to the Conference of Ministers of Finance and Economic Development. It will be relevant and indeed satisfying technical curiosity to mention some of the recommendations. These recommendations included the need for effective planning of socio-economic policies that are inclusive and resilient. The need to tackle the root causes of conflict, including development deficit, to address the peace, security, and development nexus. There was also the need for us to facilitate the promotion of economic diversification in support of the structural transformation of our economies through the creation of value chains to harness the region's important resource endowment. And the final one was harnessing the demographic dividend by investing in the youth and women, particularly noting issues related to education, skills, health, and decent jobs. Distinguished delegates, beside the 2023 pre-ministerial dialogue, the Bureau also held meetings with the sub-region to discuss the implementation of 2023 work programs and provide the necessary guidance on the strategic interventions of the office to advance the inclusive and sustainable development of the West African region. To cap it all, many members of the region were pleased to attend the high-level fora and conferences organized by ICSOE, including the 9th session of African Regional Forum for Sustainable Development held in March 2023 in Niger. The spectacular regional experts group meeting organized in June 2023 in Senegal to review and validate the study on regional value chain opportunities in West Africa. And then also, this is to facilitate the trajectory and implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now it is worth noting that despite all the significant accomplishments under Ghana and the Bureau team, change always brings new ideas. And therefore, the time is due for Ghana's presiding position to be handed over. I would like to express my gratitude to ICSOE and its sub-regional offices, particularly West Africa, for the close collaboration during the period of our mandate and for all the excellent work done. And I wish my successor good luck and offer all my support in the upcoming year. Our individual and collective efforts are crucial to bring the relevant recommendations to the attention of the highest authorities of the member countries, and together to ensure their full and effective implementation. Yes, to conclude, I would like to say that indeed the wind might drift us from our course. The waves might wash us ashore. But we should strive and never relent in our efforts to create the African dream. We should always be encouraged by the words of the first president of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He said, those who would judge us merely by our heights, the heights that we have achieved, should also do well to remember the depths from which we started. Your Excellencies, distinguished experts, I wish you a very fruitful and successful meeting, and I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kojo Esemmensa Apramba, Director General, National Development Planning Commission of Ghana. Now we are going to give the floor to the Deputy Minister of Finance of Ghana, Dr. John Kuma.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Sheikh Ahmed Bedad, Director General, Ministry of Economic Affairs and Sustainable Development, Mauritania, Chair of North Africa Outgoing Bureau. Dr. Mensa Abrampa, Director General of the NDPC. Dear Charles Paul Abani, UN Resident Coordinator, Ghana, and all your fellow colleagues of the United Nations, Director of ECANA, Mr. Taib Bakuche, Secretary General of Arab Maghreb Union, Mr. Check, Directors and Senior Representatives from ministries, institutions, and agencies of Ghana, distinguished representatives of countries, regional organizations, and development partners, distinguished delegates and guests. Akwaba is our word for welcome in Ghana. I am delighted to address the Joint Intergovernmental Committee of Senior Officials and Experts for North Africa and West Africa taking place in our beautiful city of Accra on behalf of the Honorable Minister for Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta. On behalf of the government, the Honorable Minister for Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, and people of Ghana, and indeed on my own behalf, I wish to welcome you all to this important meeting. The theme of the meeting, investing in energy, food security, and regional value chains for sustainable development in North and West Africa sub-region, is timely given the multiple challenges that our countries face. A momentous highlight from last year was COP27, Africa's COP, and the breakthrough agreement was to establish a loss and damage fund. We need to carry that same spirit into the meetings to identify key policy responses, to carry key policy responses that address the pressing issues of food security, energy transition, and development of regional value chains. These are challenges that have profound implications for the well-being and sustainable development of our two sub-regions. As of 2022, over 20 million people and at least 10 million children faced severe food shortage in Africa. Moreover, rising death levels and increasing frequency and severity of climate shocks is inhibiting our ability to invest in long-term and resilient resolutions. Against that background, we must engage in deep and meaningful dialogues over the next 3 days with a view toward proposing key policy actions and responses that can accelerate sustainable development in our sub-region. The global landscape we find ourselves is not only evolving, it is complex and challenging. Yet, we must not be pessimistic about Africa's prospects. Time and time again, as we have seen in the case of Ebola crisis, HIV crisis, and the latest COVID-19 pandemic, Africa will prove resilient. I cannot help but to be optimistic. In Ghana, for instance, a sense of a new beginning has taken hold. Truly, Ghana has paid its dues. Our fiscal situation has improved. Our reviews with the IMF under our program are being completed successfully and on time. And broadly speaking, we are making steady progress toward macro stability and debt sustainability. Additionally, our focus now as a government is on securing economic turnaround underpinned by robust institutions and active private sector. As a continent, we need a similar comeback story. West Africa's manufacturing sector accounts for less than 10% of GDP, emphasizing the urgent need to promote regional value chains to improve economic diversification and structural transformation. With the African Continental Free Trade Area in play, we can support broad improvements in competitiveness over time and build resilience to global shocks and mitigate the impacts of deglobalization. Moreover, agricultural value chains hold the potential to transform the economic landscape of North and West Africa in terms of alleviating food insecurity, creating trading opportunities, and generating quality employment. For our youthful population, consequently, reorganizing our value chains around private sector-led initiatives that introduce an add layer of efficiency and productivity improvements must be scaled across the continent. Crucially, energy poverty remains a significant impediment to economic development and trade in Africa. We must acknowledge the critical role that energy plays in our economic growth and address the limitations in energy supply that hinder socioeconomic progress. Approximately 48% of sub-Saharan Africa is connected to electricity, well below the global average of 91%. By and large, however, urban sub-Saharan Africa has access to electricity. Nearly 4 in 5 urban residents have access. The gap, therefore, is driven primarily by sub-Saharan Africa's rural population, of whom only 29% have access to electricity. We must remedy this situation. West Africa boasts of vast renewable energy potential that can harness to cover unmet power demand and achieve universal access to electricity while transitioning to a low-carbon growth path. During the annual meetings in Marrakesh, conversations on 2 to 5 GW solar plant in the north of Africa, in the north of Ghana, that supplies the sub-region were initiated with IFC, the World Bank and other development partners. Such is the scale of our ambitions. We must work together to make such iconic projects happen within our lifetimes. In relation to climate change, Ghana's commitment to sustainable development and addressing climate change through the adoption of natural energy transition framework is a shining example of the positive steps our nations can take towards a more sustainable future. As part of our updated nationally determined contribution, Ghana is poised to have approximately 24 million of carbon credits available for transactions on the compliance market by 2030. This underscores our dedication to reducing carbon emissions and mitigating the impacts of climate change. We believe that green business and green jobs not only benefit our environment, but also offer enhanced financial and social returns compared to traditional business as usual investments. Indeed, as a continent, we must recognize that the challenges we face today require adaptable and forward-thinking approaches. To that end, the Economic Commission for Africa, ECA, has been playing a pivotal role in establishing high-level platforms such as the High-Level Working Group on the Global Financial Architecture to elevate Africa's voice and enhance coordination on critical issues. I am delighted to be part of this platform and reiterate the commitment of Ghana to ensuring that consideration is given to Africa's voice, position, and common interest in global sustainable development issues. ECA is also fully committed to support its member states to a just, fair, and equitable transition to renewable energy to ensure security and access to energy for all. We express our gratitude to the ECA for their invaluable support in this endeavor. In conclusion, the challenges we face are significant, but our collective determination and cooperation can lead us to a transformative solutions. I am confident that we can cross the proverbial Jordan River together to a brighter, more inclusive future where Africa finally realizes its potential. Around that objective, I look forward to the fruitful discussions and innovative ideas that will be generated from these meetings. We must be strong and courageous as we make way in the wilderness, else we will wake up to a fallen and melancholic world that marginalizes the voice of more than 1.4 billion African people. We must make this moment count. As Nelson Mandela said, nothing is impossible. It always seems impossible until it is done. We can do only this if we love our neighbor as ourselves, rediscover our common humanity, and propelled by fierce agency for change to God and create the Africa we want. I thank you very much for your attention this morning.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Dr. Junkumar, Deputy Minister of Finance of Ghana. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, we are going to have a short break to allow the Deputy Minister to leave for urgent matter. But before this, I would like to request that we make a group photo here for the official. So please stand up and we do the picture. Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. So, we are going to allow the Deputy Minister. And after that, Mr. Edema will continue to present the government of Ghana. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, we are going to continue our opening ceremony. Now we are going to give the floor to the Director General Ministry of Economic Affairs and Sustainable Development of Mauritania, Mr. Sheikna Sheikh Ahmed Bedad. You have the floor, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, bonjour à tous. Monsieur le représentant du ministère des Finances, Monsieur le représentant du système des Nations Unies Monsieur le secrétaire général de l'Union du Maghreb arabe, chers invités en vos rangs, grades, qualités respectives. Messieurs et mesdames, je voudrais tout d'abord vous exprimer, et à travers vous, aux autorités ghanéennes, tous nos remerciements pour l'accueil et l'organisation de cette deuxième réunion commune des comités intergouvernementaux de hauts fonctionnaires et experts pour l'Afrique du Nord et l'Afrique de l'Ouest, qui n'est autre, je l'espère, que le prolongement de l'expérience positive de la première réunion commune qui s'est tenue en 2022. L'importance de cette réunion s'affiche déjà à travers son emblème. Investir dans la transition énergétique, la sécurité alimentaire, les chaînes de valeur régionales en vue du développement durable en Afrique du Nord et en Afrique de l'Ouest. Mesdames et messieurs, nos réunions se tiennent aujourd'hui dans un contexte particulier, international particulier, où l'économie mondiale demeure fragilisée par la pandémie Covid-19 et la guerre en Ukraine, qui ont entraîné une hausse des prix des produits alimentaires et de l'énergie, impactant ainsi l'ensemble des facteurs de production. Aussi, les changements climatiques ont entraîné des répercussions démesurées sur les pays de l'Afrique du Nord et de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Il est établi aujourd'hui que le thème qui sera abordé occupe une place centrale dans le développement durable de nos sous-régions. Les défis sont énormes et multiples, passant de l'alimentaire à l'énergie, au capital humain, à la problématique du développement des chaînes de valeur. C'est pourquoi d'ailleurs les objectifs que nous fixons sont au cœur des objectifs de développement durable fixés à l'échéance 2030. L'atteinte des objectifs requiert de mettre l'accent au cours des prochaines années sur des actions concrètes, notamment relever les défis de la sécurité alimentaire, promouvoir les chaînes de valeur et accélérer la transition énergétique. En effet, le phénomène de la désertification est une conséquence de la sécheresse qui affecte aujourd'hui une proportion importante de la population mondiale. Si la dégradation des terres qui se produisent au rythme actuel, on prédit que le rendement des récoltes serait réduit d'une proportion importante, ce qui aurait un impact significatif sur la sécurité alimentaire et aggraverait la pauvreté et la nutrition. Il nous faudrait absolument trouver les moyens pour inverser la tendance et remédier aux causes de la désertification, profiter des sources de l'énergie renouvelable et rehausser notre participation en amont dans les chaînes de valeur. Les résultats de nos sous-régions que vous allez discuter à Accra et les recommandations vont dessiner la trajectoire de nos ambitions et les orientations stratégiques requises pour le développement de nos pays. Messieurs et Mesdames, avant de terminer, je ne peux que remercier vivement les Nations Unies et la CIA de façon particulière pour leur soutien continu à nos pays et les autorités ghanéennes de leur hospitalité et pour l'organisation réussie de cette rencontre. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. Sheikh Ahmed Bedad. Now we are going to give the floor to the United Nations Resident Coordinator of Ghana, Mr. Charles Abani, for the goodwill message.
The departed Deputy Minister of Finance for Ghana, Dr. John Kumar, my friend, the Director General of NDPC, Dr. Kojo Mensah Abrampa, the last speaker, Shigna Baded, the Director General of the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Sustainable Development in Mauritania and Chair of the outgoing Bureau. Zahir Belbache, the Arab Maghreb Union representative. Let me also single out my sister, Ambassador Iman Ouadil, the ambassador for Morocco, but the Africa Dean of Ambassadors here, other excellencies too. Colleague Ms. Zwadrowski, the Regional Director for North Africa. My sister Ngone Diop from the West Africa region of ICSOE. The eminent people gathered here, senior experts from North and West African countries, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I wish to express my sincere appreciation to be able to offer some words here. And 3 years into Ghana, Dr. Brampa, I hope I have your permission that I'm now increasingly Ghanaian. And so on behalf of Ghana, the land of 1,000 welcomes, I say to you, Akwaba. I'm sure you've heard it already. Let me take this opportunity to also congratulate and thank the ECA in all of its ramifications and the Committee of Senior Officials and Experts for organizing this important joint meeting and for your immense contribution to, I think, the most important thing, the thought leadership and policy advisory services that are really essential for the countries to attain the Sustainable Development Goals and their national aspirations as set out in their national plans. This assembly of UN and government experts from 15 West African and 7 North African countries to discuss issues of common interest, share experiences, best practices, and peer learn to inform policy and service delivery that affects an approximate 700 million people in 2 sub-regions, the Maghreb and ECOWAS regions, which is actually about half of the African continent, is immensely important. And I think the 3 key issues around energy transitions that are sustainable, food systems, and deepening value chains will be at the core of the transformation that is required. Africa and the world have invested substantially towards achieving the goals, not only of the SDGs, but also Africa's own Agenda 2063. And yet progress is mixed amidst challenges that people have already mentioned here, including COVID-19, the impacts of global crisis, and I think constrained by finance to meet these development aspirations. A lopsided global financial system has left many countries in the room here in debt, looking for ways to address, in the context of very tight fiscal context, the challenges that they need to meet. UNCTAD estimates that the world requires an additional $6.9 trillion to reach the goals of 2030. And around 3.3 billion people live in countries that spend more on debt interest payments than essential public services such as education and health. Finding the kind of investment needed to ensure that these drivers are in place has been difficult and straddled increasingly with debt. Halfway to the 2030 agenda, the SDG progress report indicates that we're leaving more than half of the world behind. And we have stalled or are in reverse on up to 30% of the SDGs. The number of people living in extreme poverty is higher than it was 4 years ago. Hunger is increased and back to 2005 levels. Gender equality remains a mirage and looks like it's in the distance. On current trends, only 30% of countries will achieve SDG 1 on poverty. And at the same time, inequality is growing. While Ghana, like many nations, has set ambitious targets for 2030, progress remains hindered by the challenge of securing resources and utilizing resources to close the financial gap of an estimated $43 billion annually between now and 2030. while progress has been made, and we congratulate Ghana on that, much remains to be done. Otherwise, we see a downward spiral of slow growth, social unrest, debt distress, reduced investment, diminished trade, all fueling economic underperformance and political unrest. That is why this gathering of experts is here today. Many of the countries here participated robustly in the SDG Summit, and it's an unwavering commitment to ensure that we achieve these and leave no one behind. Ghana itself has embarked on ambitious, bold, and accelerator actions to finance and support these transitions. Permit me to just point out to the 6 transitions that came out of the SDGs. Those 6 transitions around decent jobs and social protection, transforming education, food systems, climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution, energy transitions, and inclusive digitization. I think this forum will address many of those. Beyond that, let me draw your attention to the SDG Summit, to the UN Summit of the Future, which will also come in 2024, where a number of these structural issues through the 5 chapters of sustainable development, sustainable finance, peace, security, young people and future generations, and global governance will be discussed, and ensure that all countries are participating, particularly from this continent, in that important conversation. I will not bedevil the detail, you are the experts, but from our area, we really look forward to the pragmatic reflection and solutions that enable these 2 sub-regions to grow in important areas of sustainable energy, the impacts of climate change and climate finance, and particularly the opportunities for COP28 that emanate from the Africa Climate Summit. Of course, the prospects of AFTA, not just to ensure improved well-being and prosperity on the continent, but importantly to connect to that 3rd theme of expanded value chains. Renewed effort to really address the finance challenges and bring in the private sector. System-wide approaches that mean a whole of society rather than just specific sectors, and building resilience against shocks, fostering innovative ecosystems. Africa has a lot to offer, and a lot of the knowledge exists within our system, and strengthening our entrepreneurs as we balance development needs with sustainable debt and create forums like this where Africans pull together to find joint solutions. We remain as the UN, both in country and I'm sure regionally, in support of all of these efforts. Let me thank once again the Economic Commission for Africa for sustaining these important meetings. This is where the real work gets done. And also commend the members of the Committee of Senior Officials and Experts for their efforts and for their thought leadership. Let us think creatively and boldly about how we can ensure the delivery of quality and valued public services and goods while ensuring economic growth. Welcome to Accra, and I wish you successful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Abani, United Nations Resident Coordinator of Ghana. Now we are going to give the floor to Mrs. Zuzana Szwodrowski, the Regional Office, Director of the Regional Office for North Africa in Morocco.
Thank you. So, Your Excellency, Resident Representative Mr. Charles Abuni, Dr. Kojo Menchap Abrampa, Director General National Development Planning Commission Ghana, Chair of the outgoing West Africa Committee, Mr. Chekunchik Bedar, Director, Ministry of Economic Affairs and Sustainable Development Mauritania, Chair of the outgoing North Africa Committee, representative of Arab Maghreb Union, Excellencies, colleagues, it's really great pleasure to welcome you here today at this important meeting of Intergovernmental Committee of senior officials and experts, which is second time in a row done with jointly with colleagues with West Africa. As was already mentioned by speakers before me, the meeting is taking place in actually extraordinary times. It is in the aftermath of COVID and amid ongoing major global conflicts and accelerated negative impacts of climate change, which are really posing significant challenge. So, as in the past, Africa actually has made tremendous progress, and since early 2000s, it was experienced solid growth, and it was actually second fastest growing region globally after Asia, developing Asia, and it was also labeled Africa Rising, or as Mackenzie put it, Lions on the Move. So due to COVID in 2020, first time after decades, Africa actually experienced decline in real GDP growth. But it was not one-off, because after a fast recovery in 2021, we are now putting along with a growth somewhere between 3 and 4%. And as we all know, this is far below what is needed to reach SDGs. So the conservative estimates for growth needed to reach SDGs are about 7% annually. But this is actually becoming probably higher. Added challenge to that is climate change. So not only Africa is asked to grow, or is expected to grow fast, it also is increasingly under pressure to respect planetary boundaries and pursue green transition. So this is a major challenge. As was already mentioned, food security has been another area of setback. So we are almost where we were globally and also on the continent in about 20 years ago in 2005. So in the aftermath of COVID between 2019 and 2022, 120 million additional people are undernourished globally. Now, almost half of them are in Africa, 50 million, and in our two sub-regions, North and West Africa, 25 million. So our two sub-regions are disproportionately impacted. Specifically Africa, North Africa, additional 5 million, and West Africa, approximately additional 20 million. So this also explains why second time in the row we are building on this very important topic of achieving food security in the region. Another area already mentioned is energy security, and it's obvious that without energy security we will not have food security, but there are many other reasons why energy security is critical. And here, of course, Africa has a great potential, and the potential has been mentioned many times, to tap into renewable energy, and in fact Egypt and Morocco are already exhibiting global leadership in some areas of this, but of course more needs to be done. So this is another objective of this meeting. And finally, regional and global cooperation. Africa is actually the most fragmented continent. It has a very large number of small countries and many landlocked countries. So the way to overcome it is the regional cooperation. So AFCFTA presents a major opportunity also for our North Africa sub-region, which so far is the least integrated region on the continent and also one of the least integrated globally. So, but to tap into it, of course, it's even more attractive in the aftermath of COVID and amid the current situation with the breaking down global supply chains and countries increasingly wanting to trade with trusted partners and neighbors. So this is a great opportunity to create regional value chains, and as a group also negotiate and be effectively part of the global chain. So the purpose of this meeting actually is to build on the last year and propose innovative solutions and also some actions that we would like to also follow and support our countries in implementing. So we see tangible results, not in the years to come, but also in the decades ahead. So again, I welcome you here. We wish you very fruitful deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Now we are going to give the floor to the Director of the Sub-Regional Office for West Africa of ICSOE, Madam Ngoni Diop.
brother. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance, Dr. Kuma, representing the Excellence and Honorable Ofari Ota, Ken Ofari Ota, Minister of Finance of Ghana, Mr. Tayyip Bashoum, Secretary General of Arab Maghreb Union, Dr. Kojo Esim Mensah, our dear Chair, and Director General of National Development Planning Commission, Ghana, Mr. Sheikh Ahmed Beda, Director General, Ministry of Economic Affairs and Sustainable Development, Mauritania, Chair of the North Africa Outgoing Bureau. My very dear brother, Charles Abani, our UN resident coordinator, very capable UN resident coordinator, who is representing here in Ghana. Our colleagues from United Nations, distinguished representative, high-level representative of our countries from North and West Africa, but also regional organizations and development partners, our distinguished delegate and guests, my dear colleagues from SRO North Africa, SRO West Africa, but indeed my dear colleagues from headquarters, they are here, coming from Addis. Ladies and gentlemen, warm Akwaba. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome you all in this joint intergovernmental committee of senior officials, of experts in North and West Africa. On behalf of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, ICSOE, I would like, through you, Kojo, but through our honorable ministers as well, Minister Ken Ofori Atta and Minister Koma, to express our profound gratitude to the government and esteemed people of Ghana for hosting us in this beautiful city of Accra, as for contributing financially to the organization of this joint statutory meeting that speaks to Ghana's unwavering engagement and commitment to really supporting Africa's resilience and development. Yet, you're setting up of a dedicated and professional national organizing committee led by you, Director Kojo, and also the Director Alassane Idrissa and many other colleagues from Ghana, was instrumental to the organization of this joint meeting. I would like to extend my gratitude to the North Africa and West Africa Outgoing Bureau in the leadership of their chair, namely Mr. Sheikh Ahmed Beda and Dr. Kojo Mensah Apram, respectively, whose leadership has been highly appreciated. And of course, my dear brother, as I said, Charles, very, very effective, representing us here, helping us to delivering us one UN in support to SDG achievement and the AU Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Distinguished senior official and expert, this is the second joint intergovernmental committee for senior official and expert in West and North Africa, following the one organized effectively and successfully in Marrakesh, Morocco by the Kingdom of Morocco. And I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank very, very much the Kingdom of Morocco for having hosted that very successfully and very effectively. Thank you again. Shukran. The main thrust of the joint statutory meeting is to create a platform for cross-regional fertilization, sharing of expertise, innovative solutions to addressing development issues in our two regions. Our in-depth thanks to you, distinguished delegate from the two sub-regions, for your understanding of the value, contribution, and power of togetherness. Excellencies, this year joined eyes under the theme Investing in Energy Transition, Food Security, and Regional Value Chain for Sustainable Development in North and West Africa sub-region is being organized in a very difficult global context. marked by multiple crises, including the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic, Russia-Ukraine war, it has been told, climate shock, the tightening of the global financial liquidity, and mounting insecurity threat around the world, in particular in the Sahel region, and of course in Sudan. As a result, Africa continues to face poor growth trends, with recent performance of the near-term outlook showing a gap from the 7% SDG target set for least developed countries. In the UN report 2020 update on economic growth in Africa, I presume that actually the continent will be resuming perhaps the growth to between 4.7 and maybe 5, but unfortunately in 2002, but unfortunately the latest one gives us more insight into the decline of our growth, suggesting a kind of stagflation. Decline in growth, but also inflation, which is quite worrisome. Furthermore, at the midpoint of the 2020 agenda deadline, West Africa, but also North Africa, are not on track to achieve the SDGs. The pandemic and the subsequent Russia-Ukraine conflict have set back progress to SDG almost everywhere, including in our two regions. Yet, the growing debt burden, fueled by an unprecedented soaring public debt and the high cost of borrowing and currency devaluation, are indeed also worrisome. As of August 2023, 8 African countries are in debt stress, including 1 country from West Africa and 1 from North Africa. ICSOE has been at the forefront with supporting the Africa High-Level Working Group on the global financial architecture, which must be reformed if the continent is to address some of the root causes of its debt burden. The group recently called for key reform of the Bretton Woods institution at the recent 2023 annual meeting of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund held in Marrakech, Morocco, is a major step forward in strengthening Africa's voice and common interests. Excellencies, Monsieur le Ministre distingué délégué, répondent aux 2 problématiques que voilà de notre réunion de cette année. En l'occurrence, la transition énergétique et la sécurité alimentaire ont des effets multiplicateurs sur tous les 17 objectifs de développement durable. Il est également important de rappeler que des systèmes alimentaires et nutritionnels durables, la décarbonisation énergétique avec un succès universel, un accès universel de population à l'énergie, font partie des 6 transitions transformatrices identifiées au niveau global pour tous les pays, incluant les nôtres, aux fins d'accélérer la réalisation des ODD. Excellences, Monsieur le Ministre, distingués délégués, l'insécurité alimentaire est malheureusement un défi structurel en Afrique, touchant 20% de la population du continent, comparé à 9,8% au niveau mondial. En Afrique de l'Ouest et le Sahel en particulier, presque 20 millions de personnes en sont affectées. Cela représente plus de 5 fois la population de 2014, donc avant les ODD. De plus, la proportion de la population se trouvant dans une situation d'insécurité alimentaire modérée ou sévère était estimée à 53% en moyenne en 2022. En Afrique du Nord, en 2021, 34% de la population faisait face à une insécurité alimentaire modérée ou sévère, tandis que 11% d'entre elles manquaient de nourriture. Cependant, il convient de souligner que la proportion de personnes mal nourries en Afrique du Nord est inférieure à la proportion moyenne globale. Et ça, c'est vraiment à féliciter. Malgré ces défis que voilà, les gouvernements de l'Afrique de l'Ouest et du Nord ont fait montre d'un engagement sans faille à renforcer leurs producteurs agricoles indispensables à la sécurité alimentaire. Dans cette perspective, 3 impératifs me semblent importants. Ces impératifs qui s'imposent sont les suivants. D'abord, l'impératif d'accroître substantiellement et durablement la productivité agricole en général et la productivité céréalière en particulier, grâce à l'utilisation idoine d'engrais. 13 des 15 pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest n'ont toujours pas atteint 50 kg par hectare recommandés par la déclaration d'Abuja de 2006 pour la réalisation de la révolution verte tant rêvée sur ce continent. Le second impératif, dirais-je, est celui de la mobilisation de ressources, en particulier domestiques, nous devons aussi, autant que faire se peut, mobiliser des ressources domestiques, des ressources au sein de nos pays qui nous permettent de répondre aux plus percés, mais enfin qui nous permet également de pouvoir mettre en œuvre notre agenda de développement, l'agenda de transformation structurelle qui passe par la transition énergétique, qui passe également par la sécurité alimentaire. Par exemple, en 2021, l'allocation des ressources publiques, budget national au secteur agricole dans les pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest était toujours en deçà de 10%. Et 10%, c'est l'objectif fixé par la déclaration de Mobutu de 2003 dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre du programme détaillé de développement de l'agriculture africaine, PDDI en short. Le troisième impératif, me semble-t-il, est celui d'accélérer la mise en œuvre de la ZLECA. C'est notre ancrage pour la réduction de la pauvreté, mais c'est notre ancrage pour la transformation structurelle. C'est également notre ancrage pour assurer la sécurité alimentaire, avec un accent particulier sur le développement accru des chaînes de valeur. Il convient de noter que nos deux sous-régions, c'est-à-dire l'Afrique de l'Ouest et l'Afrique du Nord, sont bien positionnées dans les chemins avancés des chaînes de valeur, du fait de la concentration de leur propre exportation sur des matières premières telles que le pétrole, le gaz, les phosphates, pour ne citer que celles-là. Les efforts en cours pour booster les chaînes de valeur dans l'agroalimentaire, le textile, l'automobile, l'aérospatiale devraient être accélérés et renforcés. C'est un euphémisme que de le dire. Excellencies, climate crisis is among the most critical issues facing African countries. Therefore, energy transition is one of the key pillars of climate action toward achieving net zero by 2050. Although progress is notable on access to energy, West Africa has one of the lowest rate of access to electricity globally, with only about 42% of the population and 80% of the rural residents having access to electricity. That's very low. Despite the enormous potential for renewable energy in Africa, including hydropower, solar, winds, and geothermal, you name them, which are currently underutilized, only 9% of all energy generated in Africa in 2020 came from renewable source of energy, which is very little, 9 only, with a strong reliance on hydropower. Therefore, affordable energy for all Africans is the immediate and the absolute actually priority. In this regard, the ECOWAS sub-region has set a clear target to increase the share of renewable energy in the region overall electricity mix to 10% in 2020 and 19% in 2030. Including large hydro, the share would reach 35 in 2000 and 35 between 25 and 48% in 2030. Overall, distinguished delegate, achieving Africa's energy means more than doubling energy investment to over US $190 billion each year from 2026 to 2030, with 2/3 going to clean energy. It's a lot, but it's doable because we have internally the means to do it. In this regard, allow me to recall the Climate Solidarity Pact proposed by the UN Secretary General, which called on major emitters who have benefited from fossil fuel to make extra effort to cut emissions, and wealthy countries to support emerging economies to do so. It also urges countries to implement a fair, equitable, and just energy transition while providing affordable electricity for all. In this context, I would like to recognize our country's commitment to engage toward the imperative path of energy transition. In particular, the adoption of the Ghana National Energy Transition Framework as a positive step toward a more sustainable future for the people of Ghana, and many, many more countries are actually engaged in the same pace and in the same path. Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my last message are twofold. First, investing in food security, energy, and value chain is a must avec capital M. If Africa in general, and our two regions in particular, are to deliver development outcomes for the 700 million inhabitants. Second, both North Africa and West Africa are endowed with magnificent resources, which, with the right mix of policies and financing, could be translating into compelling development change. I will say transformational development change for the 700 million inhabitants of our birth region. Our common motto, it goes without saying, is let's act now. Act now together to deliver such much needed policy change and sustainable development result for the 704 million inhabitants of our two regions. Let's walk the talk. We're together. Together for change, together for transformational change, together for sustainable development. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Okay. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, I would like to make a big mention to the media, photographers, videographers who are present here to make our event more visible. Yes. After all these important speeches, with your permission, we are going to give the floor to Dr. Kojo for the official opening of the second joint intergovernmental committee senior official and expert for North and West Africa on behalf of the Minister of Finance of Ghana. After this opening official ceremony, we will have a group photo and some interviews. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, the delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I have the list of the jobs to be done now, but the most important. Having listened to all these presentations, it is obvious why we've gathered here, to really think through some of these issues, to be able to work along a process of coordinating our actions as continents, as a continent, and also as sub-regions, to cooperate and be able to complement each other in order to resolve them. We heard that we're still struggling with the issue of poverty. We're still struggling with the issue of hunger. The insecurity in the two regions are obvious. And we're still struggling with responding to the need of our youth. And even though the pursuit that we've done over the years, we have not been able to include our women and girls in the development trajectory as expected. But we have hope. Hope in the knowledge and the skills and the capabilities that we have on this continent and also in our respective regions. We have hope because our youth have all the innovative capacities that is in the world now. We've educated them, and we need to explore and utilize this potential that we have. Most importantly, we have all the needed natural resources to be able to respond to the three things we want to talk about now: the energy challenge, the food challenge, and for us to trade among ourselves as a country, utilizing the value chain process, which the two regions have elaborated and supported us all through this year. Your Excellencies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I therefore stand in the big shoes of the Honorable Minister for Finance, the Honorable Ken Oforiatta, and declare the 26th Joint Governmental Committee of Senior Officials and Experts of North and West Africa, respectively, open. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kojo. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, we are going to have another group photo with all the delegates. It will be in this room. So, Mr. Photographer. Here? Okay. So we invite all the delegates to come here for the group photo, please.